Let's take a look at solving this equation by the square root property. And notice that here, instead of just having the variable squared, we've got an expression that has two terms squared. So, but the process is still the same. I want to isolate what I'm squaring. So what I'm squaring is 2x plus 7. So I want that on one side of the equals alone. So I am going to isolate that by subtracting 16 from both sides. And I now have the square of 2x plus 7 equals negative 16. So I have a square on the left and a real number on the right. So I'm ready to apply the square root property. And remember that when I apply the square root property, I am exchanging this power of 2 on the left for a plus or minus square root applied to whatever is on the right. So on the left, I no longer have a square. On the right, I now have applied plus or minus square root to the negative 16. And so notice that I'm to simplify my answer, I'm to use radicals as needed, express complex numbers in terms of I, and to use a comma to separate answers as needed when I put my answers into the solution set. All right, well, first of all, I'm going to simplify this radical. And remember, the way that we do that is by rewriting the square root of negative 16 as the square root of 16 times the square root of negative 1. And the square root of 16 is 4. The square root of negative 1 is I. So this is plus or minus 4i. All right, now we want to isolate the x. So notice first we isolate what we're squaring. In this case, that's not merely an x. So once I apply the square root property, I don't have x isolated on one side of the equation this time. But I want to isolate x. So I'm going to first isolate 2x. And I'm going to do that by adding a negative 7 to both sides of the equation. And whenever I do this, I want to put what I'm adding in front of the plus or minus. So the negative 7 goes in front of the plus or minus 4i. And now I want to isolate the x by dividing both sides by 2. So I now have x equals negative 7 plus or minus 4i divided by 2. And these should be split up into two separate parts. The real part is negative 7 over 2. I'm going to add to that and also subtract from that 4i over 2, which this simplifies to negative 7 halves plus or minus 2i. So when I go to write the solution set, I'm actually writing these separately, separating them by a comma. So I have negative 7 halves minus 2i, and I also have negative 7 halves plus 2i. that is my final answer. This is what you would be entering into my math lab. On your exam, you would be giving me the solution set as I've done here.